right over to Robin Drake, retired FBI special agent and chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. Robin, we've been talking about this one for quite some time. I know you had even emailed me when the verdict came in going, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I'm wrong. But I don't think you were. I think all of us felt the same way on this and really still do. What's been your reaction thus far now that we have a verdict of guilty in the Richard Allen case?
I had so many emotions at the same time, Tony. It's this is one of those cases going to be with me, and I know a lot of people the rest of my life. I think
Hmm.
it disbelief was my first one because I still haven't changed my thought patterns. I've done a lot of reflection. It's like my first reaction was I must have a blind spot.
Hmm.
I must not see something that other people have seen. I'm wrong. I mean, it was really reflective and blaming myself for not seeing something that the jury saw.
Hmm.
And then I'm going through my range of emotions. I even reached out to you, as you know. I apologize. I must have been way off of what I say.
And
But
I'm
then
like, you're great. We all agree.
I know. And then I look at what Jennifer Hoffendeffer
Yeah.
posted, and she does the same thing. She does a beautiful job of outlining the behavior arc. And I just keep going to data. I just don't see the pattern of his life that fits what he's accused of. And then I go, then I'm in right after it's my fault. I go immediately to the families. I'm like, gosh dang, I really hope they feel satisfied with the verdict
Mhm.
because I still am just always about the victims in this thing. And the only victims left now are Richard Allen's family and the girl's parents and families. And I hope that they have satisfaction with this. But it's hard to it's just hard. It's just there's so many emotions in there. And then I'm like, well, then I start looking at the defense attorneys. What could they have done differently? What could they have done better? They were hamstrung with so many things, as I know we're going to go through. It's just it. Unfortunately, from beginning to end, from everything you and I have looked at, analyzed, commented on, and all your other contributors, nothing has changed.
No.
And that's what's just disappointing. I still have not changed my mind on what I'm seeing and what I'm assessing, and yet he's guilty.
Yeah.
I don't get
You had a lot more self-reflection on this case than I did. When I heard the verdict, I'm like, they're wrong. I'm like, they're just wrong.
it.
They are just wrong. I was like, what did I get wrong here? I didn't get anything wrong. You didn't get anything wrong here. I mean, facts are facts. And it's not like you or me had some sort of inflated, maybe this could be possible story here. It's just based on facts and
Data.
based on the data that is there. These are non-refutable things. The jury did not hear so many pieces of this case. Just
Yeah.
as you said, is there something I didn't see? It's the other way, I think, Robin. It's what the jury didn't see. We
Yeah.
we saw everything. In the mind of the jury, we saw too much. In the minds of the prosecution, we saw too much. They tried to tamper down anything they possibly can, and they played whack-a-mole to such an extreme on this case that it was spooky. It almost
Yeah.
really makes you question, how is this part of our American justice system? How is one person or very few people allowed to have so much power over a case like this?
You really hit it right there too. That's the most disturbing thing about this case to me is how can this happen that
Mhm.
there's still so many. I mean, I get that, even with the Koberger case or any of these other cases, there's a lot of gaps in data, but but in every other case you and I have talked about, and in all these cases I generally see there's always going to be gaps. There's always going to be data that you wish you had, a weapon, a witness, or something like this. But there's always that lifestyle behavior arc that says it makes sense.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying he didn't do it. I'm just saying there's nothing that makes sense that he did it.
Yeah.
That's what's missing for me,
Yeah.
and they didn't allow that to come to light for the jury or during this prosecution. So after all my emotions are going around in self-flagellation and blaming, I'm back with you. I don't
Yeah.
think we're wrong.
No.
It's not that I think he's innocent or guilty, because I want more data,
Yeah.
and I'm not seeing it. And until I do, I don't think he's guilty. There
I
you go.
don't think that. anyone could render a verdict in a fair manner based on what was presented to the jury. And again, I agree. I can't say he's guilty or innocent. Nothing. It was just, this is what we think. Same with the guy, the officer that testified, going, that's his voice. Okay, like, what did you run it through? What's your testing method? Like, what program did you do to identify and get a signature that it is his voice? Nothing. It was just his opinion. It was truly shocking. If you don't know how the court system works in this country, you don't understand that a judge can do this. I didn't understand that until I started diving into true crime. I'm like,
And just
really?
all these, just a handful of the other potential people they were looking at or could have looked at, their behavior arcs fit closer than his.
Oh, completely.
Even if there's like only one or two data points on them, that's one or two more than we that came to light for Richard Allen. It just
Yeah.
now and also I'm not a jury blamer, a victim
Mhm.
blamer, you know. So I definitely the jury did the best they
They
could
did the best they could. Yeah.
with the instructions that because again I don't know the instructions that they got. I don't know, you know, their perceptions. I did hear I was on another show and someone's actually in the courtroom during it and where and I'm giving my I'm pontificating like I am now about, you know, what I'm not seeing, and this person came out of the courtroom saying, oh, the jury's going to convict them, and I was like, really? So I guess that the tenor in the courtroom was very different than again because we're not there, we're not
Mhm.
experiencing it as they are. And also, you know, I really thought hard about this one too. I think they really wanted and everyone wanted someone to be guilty.
Yeah.
They want to find, you know, so there can be closure. And I get that. I I just wish they I just wish we all felt better about this.
I agree.
His neighbors. He, he AR'd kids in his neighborhood, boys. He AR'd girls in his neighborhood as a teenager. And then eventually you see this pattern of behavior start to progress to the point where he decides, I'm going to go to the next level. I'm going to go hunting. Right? One of the things that has bothered me about the Delphi case is this guy standing there, and this is not him, this is just a photo I found. Is he the same mentality as Erskine and others like him? That he wakes up in the morning and decides, today is the day that we're going to make the move. Is it possible? Of course it is. Of course it is. But that means you have to, as an investigator and as an investigative team, you have to eliminate every other possibility. And when we hear that there was infighting going on, that is an indication of lack of experience. And when you have people that come into the investigation and say, look, here's what we've seen in the past, not any, the card team and, the behavior science unit and the FBI and a variety of other organizations, they can come in and ISP says, well, we're not interested in your opinion. Okay. Well, rule number one, in any type of investigation, it's not your investigation. It belongs to the children. It's your responsibility to tell their story and to tell it without an emotional connection. Karen will tell you, I've had many cases where I've told people on our team, I don't want to talk to the family right now. To this day, even Matthew Checky's mom, I've only given her a hug after the trial. I didn't talk to her one time while I was investigating her son's murder because I didn't want that to get caught into that emotional circle. Okay? And one of the things, I got to be honest with you, when I saw whoever the colonel or whatever the general, whatever the guy is, gets up in these press conferences and he's talking to the suspect through the press and telling the public that you could be in this room. We know who you are. We're coming. Okay. And then, kind of It's the emotional push. Okay. That's how investigators get in trouble. That's how you get a Richard Tuitt, where you say, okay, that's fine. He's got 3 centimeters of blood on his sweater, but we have this guy, the criminalist, who says he cross-contaminated it. Are we going to tell the public about that, or what are we going to do? Okay. No, we got the right guy. Well, wait a minute. What about this guy? His name was George Durgan, by the way. Great guy. And he testified. Okay. He testified about it. But these are the kind of things where you get this, situation where you go, well, wait a minute. I'm going to be objective here. It's my responsibility to be objective to make sure we get the right guy. And then you have a lab technician testify that they still have evidence they have not tested.
That kind of blew my mind a bit. Why wouldn't you wait to trial to have everything tested?
But now in this situation, they're saying they have hair still. Is that my understanding? Is that correct? And the criminalist said, well, yeah, but we haven't checked all that in case we need it for later. And the defense said, well, this is later. We have a guy on trial. Why isn't this occurring? Okay. What? 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 You just go, okay, what are they going to do? After they convict him, they're going to have another testing period. And hypothetically, what if it does come back to somebody else? Hypothetically, we don't know. That's a jury's decision right now. And thank you. And I'm not saying they're wrong. And he admitted it 61 times. Yeah, that's a very difficult situation. But we also have to weigh out, and I'm just being honest, does he have a psychological problem? The fact that there are 2 weapons involved in this thing. The fact that one kid is told to put the other kid's clothing on. Isn't that odd? Isn't that kind of like out there? The fact there's, the gun is used to control, hey, gun, but then the gun's not used to kill. A box cutter, a knife is used to kill. Okay. But then there's not any real evidence that he took his time. He had time. He had time to change clothing of these kids. So the time was there for the suspect. The time was available for this suspect. So why not take advantage of the time? Why all of a sudden do you now decide I have to kill not only her, I have to kill her? I have to kill them both.
And it really wasn't heavy duty concealing. I mean, it was like everyone described it as sticks on the body. If you want to conceal, you're going to put leaves, you're going to add, whatever. There's real concealment. So that part always seemed like partial, not quite concealment, something like that.
Yeah, that's more indication of personalization to the victim. That there, is a connection to the community. There's a connection to the victim. A knife is very personal.
Great.
Okay.
The scary thing is about a case like Richard Allen and the Delphi murders is that people want answers. And that's the families, the neighborhoods, the communities, everybody, they want answers for what happened to these 2 little girls. There's nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes when we go on the path of trying to find answers, we put the blinders on. We go down this path and we think we know what we're looking for. We try to find that. And in some cases that leads us in a good direction because, sometimes those instincts are correct. But they searched for 5 years for a man and they never found one. And then they go back to old interviews and, oh my gosh, look at this one. We completely dropped the ball. How did we not realize we had this one? And there's really not a whole lot in this interview other than railroading him. But they went back to that and they said, oh, well, there's this bullet. Maybe we should connect this. And the rest is really history. Yet there are so many people in this case that you had mentioned earlier. You got Keegan Kline, a convicted child predator who at the time was not a convicted child predator, literally communicating with Liberty German under the username Anthony Schatz, talking about meeting up, talking about getting together the day of the murder. Later, he's arrested on child pornography charges, and he's serving 40-some years in prison. And then, of course, you also have Ron Logan, the owner of the property, who is now deceased, has a criminal history to him, never charged, and the involvement was also not presented. None of these options were presented to the jury. If you don't have any of that, how are you going to make an educated decision?
Each one of these people, especially, I'm going, what is it?
Keegan Kline is in jail.
Keegan Kline. Look at, just do our own thought experiment here, as we love to do.
Mm-hmm.
each one of them, especially that one who's in jail right now for being in communication, for child pornography, how much easier and have maybe an easier time showing this arc of behavior. And also, if you look at the stats, most of the time, unless they're a vagrant going through the area like we had in the Rachel Morin case, there is some knowledge and connection between the victim and the murderer.
Mhm.
And we have that in at least in that one instance. And so what that does, and like you said, what the judge ruled out is reasonable doubt. If it could have been any of these other people, and I'm sitting here saying, well, that fits, that fits, that fits, it fits more than this and this, or at least equally fits, that's reasonable doubt to me.
It seems that what was pushed out of the case were all of the reasonable doubt options.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, here's a fact, this is our killer. Because I don't know if any of these people are, but they all play roles in this universe of what is
Right.
going on. And the fact that they didn't allow the jury to even hear those names, or at least put them into context, because they're all players in this, it is shocking. And in no way, I think, fair. It's one of the many informed of. You have other pieces of evidence that never were heard. The Odinism theory, not touched upon at all. And I was saying towards the end of this trial, did we even need to go to Odinism? Because to me, on the outside, it felt like the defense didn't do a very good job at all. It felt like the prosecution really pointed out all of the weaknesses. And I thought, well, Odinism really doesn't even need to be in there. It couldn't be. The judge wouldn't allow it. But I guess I was wrong. Maybe they did need the Odinism theory. Do you think the Odinism theory would have helped this case, or would it have pushed the jurors even further to the side going, that's too fantastical, if we didn't have the rest of the context?
I think what could have helped is if you remove the label of Odinism and just put like a cult-like murder,
Mm-hmm.
or ritualistic type murder without an inflammatory or weird sounding label on it. You
Mhm.
just say that, in other words, give it a reason, a motive for committing this murder was ritualistic,
Mhm.
without giving it a particular label of meaning. I think that probably would have had more traction, just because it sounds better to the ear. I think
Yeah.
if it's presented more in a pragmatic, scientific way, not science of the supernatural or Odinism, but just
Mhm.
in a ritualistic kind of cult-like way. Because there's tons of cases that there's cult-like ritual murders and things that
Mhm.
happened. And I mean, if you look at it, look at Lori Day Belvallo.
Mhm.
That was a wackadoo religious cult-like murder of her children
Yeah.
that you didn't give any kind of religious label to.
Mhm.
And if we had called that, that it was Odinism, it would have sounded a little weirder.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
The sketch is another big part of this case. None of them looked like Richard Allen. But again, the prosecution, Gull specifically, said, no, inadmissible. The jury doesn't need to see the sketches that we all put out and said, this is our man. And he doesn't look a thing like the guy. That might be some reasonable doubt there that this person that people described doesn't look at all like your suspect. They also said, this is a taller man. Any eyewitness who claims to have seen this man claims he was taller, like upper 5 feet, lower 6 feet. Richard Allen is 5'4". It's a pretty, if there's a big difference between 5'4" and 5'10" or 5'11". You can kind of mix it up, I think, anywhere in like the upper fives to lower sixes if you're just guessing how tall someone is. If you're in the lower fives, I think most people would guess you're in the lower fives. It's a pretty steep difference there, by like a head. You're not going to, I guess, mix that up. I guess if you've been alive for any amount of time and know the basics of our measuring systems.
guilt confirmation bias at play.
Yeah.
I really think that's it. And that interview really said it all to me. The transcript of his interrogation, that they put out there was just they saw him as guilty, and they went right to an accusation after a few minutes of rapport and trust, where he starts disclosing, and they immediately went into accusation from the very get go.
What's
And
interesting, yeah, but what's interesting about all the video that they showed him, though, or that they showed the jury, there was ones of Richard not in that delusional state, where he's just mumbling and going, I killed them, and then goes and eats, Leviticus. That's what he's been doing. He was eating the Bible. He was eating his own feces. He's running headfirst into a wall, and they're saying, well, see the video. He said he did it here. But where he's coming out of work from CVS and they're talking to him, totally different human being. One has not had a psychotic break. The other has, because they've been in solitary confinement for that long. That's another one that really kind of shocked me. Does the general public, do jurors not understand? I mean, just the impacts of what that kind of torture will do to someone. I mean, even if it's spelled out for you, does the general public literally think, I could stand that? I'm a strong man, or I'm a strong woman?
no, you can't. Yeah. So And I mentioned it in your other show too. I'm reading another one too. I'm reading well, I can't remember. So it's about Raoul Amundsen. This is the greatest adventurer and greatest explorer of the last couple hundred years. This guy is actually the first one to reach the South Pole.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned, the voyage of the Jelka. I can't remember saying it. It's a Belgian ship that got trapped in the ice pack down there in Antarctica. And even back then, the science and understanding of what isolation does to the human being is profound. And I've had people say to me too, well, he got 1 hour of sunshine a day. He got to go out. That doesn't do it. It doesn't do it at all. These people were trapped with each other. There's like 14 of them, and they still had 2 that became insane, and 1 committed suicide when they returned, and 1 down there. The effect of isolation on us as a species is profound. We are not genetically and biologically coded to be alone. And when you're put in isolation like that, it does horrible things. But that's why we have all these NASA studies for the travel to Mars. And even before we went to the moon, because it's not about, yes, it's about the distance, about the radiation, all these things. It's about the human isolation and what it does to us.
Yeah.
And you have to pick very specific people that can actually handle that. And not many can, if any. And so when you take someone like Richard Allen, who may be right on the precipice because he's self-described as having some psychological issues, he says he's suicidal, where he can function completely fine if all things remain equal. But then when you just teeter him over that edge, like you would anyone in that isolation, all the behaviors, and the psychiatrist or psychologist, I can't remember which it was, that the defense brought on that talks about the effects of isolation on the brain. They did a great job there. I don't know why they didn't harp on that more, because it has a severe, profound effect on us and our physiology. Just read any history book, read any explorer book where someone's exploring anywhere in the Arctic, in the North Pole or South Pole from around the 17 to 1800 time frame. You will see exactly what I'm talking about. And this is just not, it's just us as a species.
Yeah, it's just how we work. It is what it is. I want these families to, have closure. I know that's a cliche thing to say. When you lose your kid, you're never truly going to have closure. But have something that brings some sort of end to this chapter. Just a bookend. The families being satisfied in some way, shape, or form as much as you can after losing your child. I don't know if they are or not. I'm not trying to speak for them. I know, from the perspective I have, if I was a parent of one of these kids, I don't think I'd be very happy. I would feel like, well, yeah, we named somebody, but I don't think I'd feel very confident about this. Do you think the families are satisfied? I suppose it's easier to want to fit the square peg in the round hole, and maybe they did it here. But I think deep down, you probably know, was this the right peg for the hole?
I don't know. I was on, I had a tail end of listening to someone actually who's friends of the family on another show. And there's a lot of emotion that's going on with everyone on both sides, both the Allen family and the victims' families. And it's one of those things I don't know the answer to that. I don't presume the answer to that. The challenge I would think that they're going to have is the fact that there's going to be an appeal. And so the appeal process to me would not allow them to move forward. So I don't know what they need. It's one of those things you just don't know what the families need. Like with all these other cases, I just want them to be satisfied.
Yeah.
I want justice and I want satisfaction for the victims. And my gut is, I don't think we're there yet on this.
Yeah. One can only hope. What will happen next. It's likely going to go to appeals, and off of the laundry list of things that went wrong in this case, I would be shocked if he does not get an appeal, or at some point. Now, that could take a long time. It might not be the first round. They're like, oh, yeah, you're good, depending on who it goes to. But, if Scott Peterson, if the Menendez brothers can get a second look at their case, this thing is screaming with inconsistencies that need a second look. It'll be fascinating.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what's that group coming in for Scott Peterson, the
Innocence Project. The
Innocence Project. This is ripe for the Innocence Project. There's no doubt.
Without a doubt. Robin Drake, retired FBI special agent, chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, and author of many books, including this brand new one right here, Unbreakable Alliances. Please, it would make a great Christmas gift. Awesome insight into our behavior and alliances that we make in our lives and how they can positively impact our lives. Great Christmas gift. I do highly recommend checking it out. Get that wherever books are